One Gavin Newsom is, I predict, going to have to resign. And if he doesn't resign, he's going to get thrown out by special election. Yeah, they have those in California. They do have those in California. Before I get to that, another shout out for our friends over at American Heart for Gold. You can get up to $15,000 worth of free silver with an initial purchase of gold right now if you call 1-844-495-1115, or you go to trishlovesgold.com, trishlovesgold.com, because I do. Or you could just text my name, Trish, to 65532, 65532. Text TRISH for more information about how you get up to $15,000 in free silver. Listen, I think gold is one of those things that you want to be in right now, because any which way you slice it, and I have such optimism about this administration, all the great things they're going to do. But the reality is we still have a lot of outstanding debt. You still have a desire by so many emerging market countries to try to find another way to solve their problems, and they want to wean themselves off of U.S. treasuries. Why? Because, well, look what we did to Russia. Any day of the week, we can say, you know what, we're not going to honor those treasuries. And so then you lose your money. So consequently, they want something else. And it's why you see them stockpiling gold. So take a look at it, 1-844-495-1115, or go to trishlovesgold.com today. Gavin Newsom is either going to have to resign or he will be called out in a special election. That is my prediction right now, because I have never seen such incompetence. It is truly a shame what has happened to that beautiful state. I used to live there, actually, in San Francisco. I used to call it Sucks Francisco, though. That was my nickname. Not very nice of me, I know, especially given that I was a local news anchor there, but I really didn't like it. It started off bad. Day one, they had that Beta Breakers race where people are running naked in the street, and the video is all coming into the newsroom, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, excuse me. And they're like, oh yeah, just make sure that you blur out any parts that shouldn't be seen. And I'm like, you're kidding, right? Like, this is like some kind of hazing joke. They're like, no. And they were proud of it, proud of their naked race. They were proud of their homelessness. They didn't want to deal with any of these things. I'm like, okay, get me out of here. I'm not raising a family here. Thank you very much. I need to move back to the East Coast. And we did. But what I would say is that it is a beautiful place. And I used to think, what a shame that it's so messed up. And this was a zillion years ago, right? This is back in the year 2000. The tech bubble had just burst. I remember you couldn't even get a U-Haul truck. It was good timing for us, though, because we were trying to find an apartment, and the rates on the rents were going woohoo, way, way, way down. But I never liked it. I just never liked it. I thought, this could be great, but the place is so messed up. And like I said, that was 25 years ago. So now just imagine what's going on. It's gotten worse and worse and worse and worse. And so now Gavin Newsom is going to have to face the music. Gavin Newsom must resign, or there needs to be a special election. They got rid of Governor Davis that way. They can get rid of Gavin Newsom that way. I'll just tell you, look, Trump tried to warn Gavin. He tried to warn the lawmakers in California this. It's like he's incredibly prescient. He even talked about this on Joe Rogan's show just a couple of months before the election. This has been a big cause of his. Nobody would listen. People laughed when he talked about the force back in 2019. I'm going to show you this clip. But first, hear what he had to say the other day about how he tried to convince Gavin to do a deal on the water 5 years ago.
Gavin Newsom had an opportunity to have millions of gallons a week, a day, millions and millions of gallons come down from the north. And I was able to get him federal approval from that, from the Department of Commerce of all departments. I didn't realize it would go through Commerce. I would have thought environmental, but it goes through Commerce. I got all of the approvals, and he said, I don't want to sign it. I don't want the water. We don't need the water. I said, you need the water. Your reservoirs are empty, the whole place. You need the water. That was 5 years ago. And I had it all done. The work was all done. We sent it to him. He refused to sign it. And if you noticed yesterday, the hydrants were empty. They didn't have any water, many of them. They said 20%, but now I just heard 50%, and now none of them have water, and that fire is still raging. When he turned that down, I was going to give him unlimited water. It would come down. It really comes down from the north, way up north, including parts of Canada. It's so much water that they wouldn't know what to do with. Just the opposite would have happened. And that's the reason that this happened. He wouldn't do what we wanted. And we're going to force that upon him now. But it's very late, because I think it's one of the great catastrophes in the history of our nation. This is not just in Los Angeles. I've never seen anything like that, devastation. And we're talking about homes that cost $200, $300, $400 million. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. People that, and very influential people worldwide. I don't know that they ever go back either, because they weren't happy with California. They weren't happy with Gavin Newsom. They weren't happy with their whole lifestyle there, with the crime being out of control, all the other problems. They were not happy. And it's going to be very interesting to see whether or not they're going to build, or whether somebody else is going to build and build a much lesser home. These were the most expensive homes outside of Palm Beach County. I see a list outside of Palm Beach. These were the most expensive homes anywhere in the world. And I think a lot of them are just not going to go back and build it. Plus, they don't want to be part of a construction site. They don't want to, they're building a home, another one's building, they're building in front of them, behind them, alongside of them. So I think it's a tragedy. I think it's an incredible tragedy. It's also a tragedy for a tax base. And the governors know exactly what I'm talking. And I'd like to hear anybody talk about that. But if you're the governor of a state and you lost thousands of very rich people that were paying a lot of taxes and weren't happy about it, and weren't happy about what's happened to California, which has all the advantages of greatness, but they've had horrible politicians. I think that Gavin is largely incompetent, and I think the mayor is largely incompetent, and probably both of them are just stone cold incompetent. What they've done is terrible.
It's unbelievably terrible. So Donald Trump, he's warned of a lot of things. I'll tell you a story quickly. You know how we worry about our grid? I've done a lot of reporting on the grid. And the guy who's like in charge of the congressional testimony, he told me, he's the lead scientist on this stuff, that he's been in Washington for many years, no other president ever called him. Donald Trump called him up and said, come in, I want to talk to you about the grid. And he was like, this is amazing, right? Like, there's a responsibility that goes with being a chief executive. That for whatever reason, too many of these governors, Democrat mayors just don't seem to understand. I will tell you this, though, that Donald Trump, perhaps because of his business background, as an entrepreneur himself, he gets it more than even your Republican governors all around. He really gets it. And sometimes I think it's, one of my friends lived in this building in New York, the same building that Ivanka, his daughter, lived in. And she said it was so spotlessly clean. Like, he takes it very seriously, right? The place was well run because it's him. And he takes a certain pride in that. So I do think that having him come in, thank goodness, right? We're just sitting here waiting. We can't wait for January 20th. But you're going to have an adult in charge who passionately cares about making sure our country is safe and taken care of. I mean, whether you're talking about getting the water situation fixed or getting the forest fires under control through better forestation. I mean, why weren't we doing that? Remember the fires that they had just a couple of years ago? It's not like these things came out of nowhere. They didn't. And back in 2019, Donald Trump traveled out there and warned them they got to find a better system.
It's cleaned out and protected. You got to take care of the floors, the floors of the forests. Very important. You look at other countries where they do it differently, and it's a whole different story. I was with the president of Finland, and he said, we have a much different, we're a forest nation. He called it a forest nation. And they spend a lot of time on raking and cleaning and doing things, and they don't have any problem. And when it is, it's a very small problem. So I know everybody's looking at that, to that end, and it's going to work out.
Well, it didn't totally work out, right? Because no, they didn't look into it, and they didn't take his advice. And there were a lot of people that laughed at him at the time, but he was right. But you have such incompetence. The mayor, Karen Bass, was out there trying to take money $17 million that she kept from the fire department, and she's moving it over to these DEI initiatives. She's trying to take money from one thing that you actually need, right? The services that you actually need. I'm sorry. Look, I'm a taxpayer, and I have a certain expectation. When I pay my taxes, I ought to be able to walk down the street and not confront homeless people everywhere like you do in California. I have an expectation that when there's a fire, that the fire trucks will show up. But, oh gosh, I shouldn't have those expectations, not if I live in California. Here's the assistant fire chief, Christine Larson, who's basically saying, hey, you dummy, if you get yourself in a fire, don't come calling me. Seriously, I thought this was parody. I showed you this, guys, some of you on Friday last week, but we got to see it again and just think about the insanity of this DEI, very proud, lesbian, black woman. You know what? I don't care. I don't care if you're lesbian. I don't care what color you are. I don't care if you're male or female, but there's some certain prerequisites, right, for the job that she just doesn't seem to think she has to follow because it's all how you look. I mean, when you're getting rescued on the ladder, gosh darn it, you need somebody who looks just like you, right? Not.
You want to see somebody that responds to your house, your emergency, whether it's a medical call or a fire call, that looks like you. It gives. No. I just want somebody who can save me. Thank you. That person a little bit more ease, knowing that somebody might understand their situation better. Is she strong enough to do this? Or you couldn't carry my husband out of a fire, which.
Yeah, you know what? I like that you would be able to carry my husband out of a fire. This is the most unbelievable one to me of all.
My response is, he got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out of a fire.
Oh, honey. Oh, honey. Okay, you see? So apparently they're not really trying to fight fires there. No, they're too absorbed with other stuff. I mean, here's the fire chief of LA. She's wearing her DEI stuff on her sleeve. That was the assistant fire chief. And you know what? I'm going to commend her for this. At least she was trying to get more money out of the mayor, Karen Bass, who didn't want to give it to her. And then there were rumors over the weekend that Karen was firing her because she dared to speak up and say, hey, yeah, we didn't have the resources we needed. Thank goodness she's willing to speak up. But again, I'm just saying, the priorities are kind of wacky.
I'm super inspired.
She took time out of her already busy schedule to tell us about her vision for the department's future, one that includes a 3-year strategic plan to increase diversity.
People ask me, well, what number are you looking for? I say, I'm not looking for a number. It's never enough.
Out of 3,300 city firefighters, only 115 are women right now. She's already looking at ways to change that. She's quick to point out that doing so has a greater purpose, attracting the best and brightest for the job.
They feel included, they feel valued, and they feel part of a cohesive team.
The chief also checks another box when it comes to inclusivity and diversity at this department. She's a proud member of the LGBTQ community.
That just kind of opens the door of people that thought, wow, I didn't even know that was an opportunity for me.
Unbelievable. Okay, unbelievable. Now, we can Monday morning quarterback, and a lot of that needs to be done. I do think that they had their priorities completely out of line. They should have been focused on the hydrants, many of which they couldn't get water out of, hydrants that were broken. They didn't have the water. They didn't have the infrastructure. They don't have the ability to fight this. But all they're concerned about right now is getting as much money as they can to rebuild. And Joe Biden said, hey, we're here, ready, able, willing to deliver. It's curious considering there was only $750 for each victim of the hurricanes in Republican Tennessee, Florida, and North Carolina. But Hollywood gets whatever Hollywood wants, as they say. Here's Gavin saying we need to rebuild because we got the Super Bowl coming up. We got the Olympics coming up. We got all this stuff coming up, to which I'm like, maybe you shouldn't have any of it coming up. Maybe we need to take it away from these crazy Democrat-run states and send it to Texas and send it to Florida and send it to Tennessee or North or South Carolina, any place that can actually manage their state.
Over the course of the next several years, Los Angeles will be host to the World Cup and then the Super Bowl and then the Olympics. With this rebuilding effort needing to take place, is LA going to be ready for all of those global events?
My humble position, and it's not just being naively optimistic, that only reinforces the imperative moving quickly, doing in the spirit of collaboration and cooperation. President of the United States, Donald Trump, to his credit, was helpful in getting the Olympics to the United States of America, to get it down here in LA. We thank him for that. This is an opportunity for him to shine, for this country to shine, for California and this community to shine. The opportunity with all of that and all that opportunity and that pride and spirit that comes from not just hosting those 3 iconic games and venues, but also the opportunity, I think, to rebuild at the same time. And that's why we're already organizing a Marshall Plan. We already have a team looking and reimagining LA 2.0, and we're making sure everyone's included, not just the folks on the coast, people here that were ravaged by this disaster.
You just said you're organizing a Marshall Plan for the rebuilding of California. What is that Marshall Plan?
For
Tell
this
us about
region,
this Marshall
we're just
Plan.
starting to lay out. I mean, we're still fighting these fires. So we're already talking to city leaders. We're already talking to civic leaders. We're already talking to business leaders and nonprofits. We're talking to labor leaders. We're starting to organize how we can put together a collection of individuals on philanthropy for recovery, how we can organize the region, how we can make sure that we are seeking federal assistance for the Olympics more broadly, but also federal assistance for the recovery efforts, and how we can galvanize the community with folks that love this community to really develop a mindset so that at scale we're dealing with the scope of this tragedy and responding to it at scale with efficiency, like the executive order I talked about, time value of delivering projects, addressing building codes, addressing permitting issues, and moving forward to rebuilding and being more resilient.
I mean, is it gross or what? He's kind of gross. He's kind of gross. And wait until you see what I found about the money he's trying to raise for himself and his own super PAC. You can't imagine anything more gross at a moment like this. But yeah, he's out there panhandling, trying to get money from Biden, trying to get money. Look, I'm not going to begrudge Californians the right to rebuild, but I am going to say this. Why is it that there was no money? There was FEMA was, oh my gosh, we can't get FEMA in the door when it's Florida. I mean, there are families that are still displaced down in Florida, in St. Pete's, for example. I know some. Or what about North Carolina or Tennessee, these places that were ravaged, right? Nobody seems to care about them. But the DEI idiots that couldn't find their way out of a paper bag, that couldn't actually manage to get the water into the hydrants and pump it in time, oh no, we're going to do everything we can for them. Just think through it. Again, I don't begrudge anyone anything, but I think the politicization of all of this is pretty damn disgusting. Where was Biden when Florida needed him? Nowhere. Here, he's like, I'll write a blank check. You know, the DEI stuff has got to go, and part of it starts at the educational level. I mean, it's unbelievable what they're trying to teach in school, and you know what? You keep breeding a group of people that all have this group think, right? They all think the same way. They got to have their pronouns out there and this, that, and the other. It's bad. It's just bad, and it's starting in our nation's public schools, and it continues on up through the university system. This is why I'm really proud to announce my new partnership with the Herzog Foundation, because the Herzog Foundation is all about getting rid of all that nonsense. Forget the DEI. Let's think about what we are as a country, a meritocracy, a beautiful capitalist meritocracy. And how do we keep that going? We need educated students that can think for themselves, that understand the importance of personal responsibility. And you know what? You're not going to get that in the public schools. Not now, anyway. I mean, it needs to change. But they got all these progressive ideologies that are capturing these teachers. No one wants to work. They all wish they could be back on Zoom. But you know what? You don't see that in the Christian schools. No, in the Christian schools, you actually see a commitment to what our foundation is as a nation. And I think that's really, really good. And it's one of the reasons I'm so proud to partner with these guys, the Herzog Foundation, because they know a whole lot about the best educational path forward for your children or maybe your grandchildren. If you're curious about whether or not you should be pursuing a Christian education, I mean, I'd say number one, yes, but check them out because they've got a ton of resources at herzogfoundation.com. Herzogfoundation.com. They are the trusted source for American K through 12 private education. They have tremendous resources there for parents and for grandparents to learn more about making that transition out of public schools into Christian schools. They have an online publication called The Lion. They've got a new podcast, Making the Leap, and they can really guide you through this because it's not an easy process, I know. And it's never easy to move or change. I know it's hard on kids, but if you're contemplating this, these guys can help. Herzog Foundation, go to herzogfoundation.com. You know, it's really important to make the right decisions for your children. I know, look, I've got 3 of them and none of this is easy, right? None of it's easy, but Herzog Foundation can help. So go check it out and learn how your child could flourish in a Christian educational environment. herzogfoundation.com.